Hello, my name is Sarah Bodman. I'm a researcher and artist based at the University of the West of England in Bristol, where I work at the Centre for Print Research. I'm here at Bristol with Terrie Reddish, who's visiting from New Zealand, and we're recording a conversation which we hope will bring some inspiration and ideas for attendees at the conference. So we're here today to have a discussion around some of the people and places that inspire us in the worlds of bookbinding and book arts and how they come together. Also give some ideas of how you might get some support or the kind of networks that you can explore to build your community. The first thing we're going to talk about will be some of the centres of activity that we know of around the world. So some of the centres of activity where we have kind of formal established centres for book arts, I would say, the main one here in the UK will be LCBA, the London Centre for Book Arts. So that was founded by Simon Good and Ira Yonemura, who also wrote the lovely book called Making Books, a guide to creating handcrafted books, which is based on a lot of the sessions and workshops that they teach there. There's also the originals. You've got the Centre for Book Arts in New York, which just celebrated a massive milestone in its history. So that's a place where you would go to learn about artists' books, to make books, to see exhibitions, to go for talks. And again, then we have places like the San Francisco Centre for the Book, which runs on the same principle. And I believe you have a speaker.
Yes, we have Colleen Curry with us today, and hi Colleen. It's one of the very few places, centres for the book, that I've actually been to, and it was amazing. Yeah. And I love the way they also do the online studio tours, which is something that we can access from down under.
That's lovely, isn't it? I think we've used those before with our students and our artist book club to say, look, you can go into this free talk, slightly different time zone, but it's still achievable, where you can learn from the desk of or from the bench of, which I think is a really very generous idea. There's also the Minnesota Centre for Book Arts, MCBA, in Minneapolis.
We love those ones too because of the online workshops, and they're very affordable as well. Really
lovely. And I've been fortunate enough to visit there twice in the past for their conferences and events, and it was just absolutely mind-blowing how huge it is and how many people use it. Really amazing place. And then we have, there are organisations like the Codex Foundation. So that was set up to massively promote the idea of the craft of the book. So the idea of preserving those skills, from letterpress to hand paper making, to fine printing, to binding, and really thinking about how they contribute to the community around the world and also to preserve those skills too. And Codex as an organisation, the Codex Foundation organises the massive Codex Symposium and Fair that takes place in usually Berkeley, isn't it, in California, which has been a massive place for people to go and promote their work and sell their work to. Lots of collections in the States as well. And I know artists from Australia have been there and been very successful in placing their works.
I've been told it is the place to be. whether you're buying or whether you're just looking or wanting to chat to the people there. That's stunning work. And it's a huge gathering as well.
Massive,
so lots of opportunity to meet people.
Yeah, and the symposium obviously as well. I think you can have a ticket just to that or to the book fair. So that's a lovely idea of kind of, educating the public and getting the word out about the kind of amazing books that go on. And there's also, if you think about in Europe and the UK, there's lots of fairs organised around the Netherlands and Germany. Here we've got the Oxford Fine Press Book Fair, which took place the other week because we're recording it now in May. And that takes place in Oxford at the examination schools. Again, that's a huge celebration of the arts of the book. So, fine binding, letterpress, pochoir. You'll go there, you'll see lots of amazing things from, incline press to international exhibitors. And that's a real collecting fair. So not so much now because travel is not so easy, but that would be somewhere that people would go to on a regular basis before we had all the wonderful lockdowns.
What I like about these things is they have a pretty set date
Yes.
or time of year each year, and it's something that you can plan to travel
Yes.
to attend. And unfortunately, I just missed out on the Oxford Fine Press Book Fair, and I'm rather sad that I did, because I hear that there was some not only amazing books but also materials to buy as well. So
Next time.
yes, next time.
Mark that calendar for next time. And, if you think in the States, there's also the Editions and Artists Book Fair in New York. So that's based around printmaking and artist books. So that might be a fair where you would go to see kind of 2D and 3D works. Mine's a mini press messe, which takes place in big tents.
Wow.
And that's usually in May as well. Weather permitting, you would have a lovely time, or a very humid time with your books. I remember being there and watching all the books kind of curling up a bit.
Grain direction.
So hot. But that, again, it's a wonderful kind of fair, very energetic, and you might be between someone who is making very fine press books, someone who's making sculptures out of books, someone, I think we were there, we were in between the anarchist book press and a guy who is making kind of toadstool sculptures out of books. So there's something for everybody there, definitely. In France, you have multiple art days. So that's artist books, editions, artist publications. That's very much more kind of that next generation of exhibitors coming up. We've got the Buchdruckkunst, obviously, in Hamburg. So that, again, is very traditional, very skills-based, very much celebrating the idea of the handmade, particularly in relation to their museum, because they've got all that beautiful letterpress workshops and studios downstairs. And then we have the Open Set International Bookbinding Competition, which Terrie knows more about than I do.
Well, it's one of the ones that we get good advance warning on, and even though we're down under, we can actually enter. So, and the other thing about it is you can also look back at the other entries, and they're very, very inspirational, just for your general work, let alone to put another entry in yourself. But it is a high standard, without being so high that you couldn't approach it with a good design. That
you can't think, I would aspire to enter that.
Yes, it's not that daunting.
Yeah, and very friendly. And I think that tours as well, doesn't it? So
It does, yes. So you get to see it in different places in America, but you can also see some of it online, which is great.
And I think, do they do a catalogue as well?
They do, and that's what I've occasionally bought one, because it is... There are some stunning bindings. Yes, yes.
And then we also have things like Vilnius with the International Artist Books Triennial. So that's been going, for over 20 years now. That's, again, it's an international competition that people can enter. They set a theme each time. I think it was To Be was the one for this time. So in 3 years' time, that will be taking place again. That's something people can send their books into to enter.
I will have to track that down and spread the word.
It starts in Vilnius, but it does go all around. So it could. There's been venues in the States, in Venice. So it does travel, and I'm sure if you put the word out, that could probably come and visit in New Zealand. That could definitely happen. And then you have things like the MCBA prize, which is, again, international call for people to submit artist books. Again, that's very much focused on, beautifully created things. Here in the UK, we also have Pages, which is a book fair that takes place in Leeds at the university there. So that was established by John McDowell and Chris Taylor. That's been going for many years. Again, that's a place to go and see books in the UK. There's also the Bristol Artist Book event that we organise here in Bristol. That's every 2 years, which tries to kind of offer new and shiny things for people to engage with. We also have around the world, there's the Salon Multiple Mollet, there's the Tijuana d'Arte, Tirage Limité, going on, so that's from Brazil to Europe and then back to the Vienna Art Book Fair, which I know quite a few people from the UK have been going to more recently.
There are 5 guilds across the ditch, or the people that are in the audience today. in Australia. So and they're active in their own regions, and some are, like, for instance, in Western Australia, it's many hours flying away from others. So it's a very large country, and that's a bit like New Zealand. We've got something like 150, 180 members, but they're spread throughout the entire country.
And that's, I think, the main problem we've encountered before with people in New Zealand and Australia. You know, you're talking about a region which is 10 times the size of our country. You know, so we're like, oh, we can celebrate with the tour of the designer bookbinders, and it's coming to this venue, which, you know, at most is going to be a few hundred miles away. It's huge where you are, and those differences make it much harder, don't they, for people to actually physically connect up and see things.
They do, and I think about the Canadian Guild and realise that they're dealing with a vast area. But I think they've done really well in terms of offering that basic training through their video. It's now a sort of not only is it a structured course, but it's also a guided course. You get to talk with your instructor
that's really nice,
along the way, which is fantastic, because it's those building blocks of understanding why you should do something before you start breaking the rules.
Definitely. Know the rules to break the rules.
But I have occasionally joined up on the Fine Press Book Association, and they produce another high quality magazine.
They do,
with introductions to people I would never normally know about. So it's a great way to find out what's available.
Yeah, that's a really good association to be part of. And then, you know, there are other ones around the world in Europe, aren't there? Even ones we know of, you know, the Association of Polish Bookbinders was something I found out about recently. So, you know, they're out there, people. You need to kind of come forward. Everyone needs to wave, like, here we are. Let's grow this network between us. And apart from the more formal organisations, there are, I suppose, more independent and informal organisations, ones that have kind of come about because of a need established by artists and practitioners themselves. For example, there's Codex Polaris, which operates around the Scandinavian and Norwegian regions. That was actually co-founded by one of our graduates who moved to Norway. I realised there was a lot of book arts activity there, but not that kind of formal structure that went around it. We've ended up doing a project with them, which was funded by the Nordic Culture Council, where we worked with artists and librarians to kind of really think about how people recognised and used artist books in their collections that they might not have been aware of before. You know, quite often there's that thing how they get catalogued under books, not artist books. And we ran some events, and, you know, Codex Polaris are really energetic. They've organised symposia, exhibitions, worked to really kind of place artists' works within collections and institutions to try and grow that field and that respect for the book in that region, which has been really successful. We've got Women's Studio Workshop in New York State, which is a massive promoter of artist books. You know, they run a residency program that people can apply to from all over the world. So you could go there as a maker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can be funded to go and stay and produce an edition, and then that gets split between you and them.
So it's not a resident, an artist in residence?
It's an artist in residence, but there's one to go and specifically to produce a book. So you would put in a proposal of the book that you would like to make. You get use of the studios and accommodation, and then they get a share of the book afterwards. But also they place books in collections, so that book would then automatically become part of a lot of collections in the USA. So that's a really big promotion of
your own work.
Exactly.
And
there are other competitions. So there's the Herz August Bibliothek in Germany. They do an annual lecture and prize. So again, that's you would apply for that, and you get funding to go and stay there and make work in response to the collection. So this year was Clifton Meadow, the American artist. So that's something to look for again in the future. That's an opportunity for a funded stay where you would make work in response to the beautiful and amazing historical collection they have. And yeah, we have, you know, that I know of, there are probably millions more that I don't. There's the International Centre of Graphic Arts in Slovenia, for example. There are collections in Brazil. There's the Klingspoor Museum in Offenbach, which do great work with artist books and, around books and book binding. There's the House of the Book in The Hague, again, very much promoting the idea of the book and all the crafts that go into these kind of things. So there's lots of places to go and visit, lots of things to keep your eyes open for in terms of prizes and competitions and things that you can enter.
The only problem is finding out about these things.
There is
and
that.
I know there's your bi-monthly newsletter, which is one way of finding out. And thankfully, it generally gives people like me enough warning if you did want to try and enter something, you got enough time to do so. But you also do a yearbook, don't you? So is that another sort of repository of information that we could go to?
It is. I suppose really my advice would be that if you kind of make a date of these things, because usually they're every year, 2 years or 3 years. So you've got your triennials, your biennials, and just have a little flag. Apply for this in time.
Or book your travel to go and see the exhibition or the Ways Goose or the book fair or whatever.
So the yearbook it comes out every 2 years because that's more of a kind of survey of activity. It is international in its focus, so the idea is that it will have some essays and critiques or interventions or writing or articles or sharing top tips from people. So there's a call that goes out each year, every 2 years, for people to submit an article. We've got a very generous peer review team who give constructive advice. And then there are sections for organisations, studios, workshops, collections, competitions, anything where, we do this, you can enter, and then that's all free to list. And also as an artist and maker, you can list 3 of your most recent works, and that's, again, is free. So the idea is that people can put their information in it for nothing, and in the hope that people might buy a copy, and then we've got enough money to print the next issue. So that's how it works. I think, there's never going to be a day where we're like, we've made £10 million in sales, so we're all going to go off on our yacht.
Sadly, no. But it's. I think that the best thing about all of these are they're places that get people talking and developing their craft, and I guess for us it's a bit like the rare book school at that we have, and sometimes it's associated with a university like Victoria in Wellington or Otago in the South Island. So. But they're great opportunities for us, and they're usually close enough for us to visit.
People to meet up. Yeah, I mean that is the thing, isn't it? It's creating those spaces, those physical spaces. We can enter books and post where we can afford to post, but you can send stuff out all over the world. But actually getting together is the space where things happen.
And also it's often a space that's got the equipment or whatever that we might be able to use, because some of those places like the universities, once you've finished your degree or whatever your study is, you can't actually get back into that space. You then seem to need to set up your own space.
You do. That's why Simon and Iris set up LCBA. Simon graduated from LCC in London, which had amazing facilities, and again, you're chucked out, where do you go? And that happens here too. Lots of our graduates have set up their own studio or practices or workshop that goes around in a van, literally called Print Van Go.
Oh wow.
Because they come here and then we chuck them out. I'd love to keep them all here forever, but I don't think the current students would be very happy about that if the studios were full of graduates. But that's what happens, and it's that kind of ambition for the field and that willingness to share and build those things that is going to make it carry on growing, isn't it? That's what you need, the people to graduate, to get the skills, to keep this mobile in more ways than one.
And I guess that's why Telluride for the American Academy of Bookbinding for me was just so amazing. It's just, it picks up on that and continues, but at the same time it's still approachable for anyone coming in, I mean, they do check that you are up to it, whatever the standard is required for the workshop, but you're going to get access to teachers of a very high quality and in an environment that is totally set up for everything you could possibly want. It's like heaven.
Beautiful, and amazing views as well.
Yes.
So I'm just thinking about galleries and places where, you could go to see artists' books. Obviously, few and far between, because how many galleries do you know that specialise in artists' books? They're out there, we know that.
But few and far between, unfortunately.
But I'm thinking, in particular, closer to home for you would be Art Space Mackay. So that is somewhere where the Libris Awards are held. So again, that's a competition for artists to enter. But this year, this summer, they held, by the time you listen to this, a conference around Art Space Mackay. So that was Abbey, Artist Books Brisbane event, which travelled to Mackay. So that was a series of presentations, a conference. You also had the Libris Awards as well as part of that, and then a book fair as well. So that's organised by Tim Mosley, Marion Crawford and Karen Florence, who's with you at the conference. So these worlds are connected.
I need to make some more connections, I can see. It's funny because it is literally across the ditch from us, but we don't always know what's going on over there. And it is that personal connection.
It is, yeah. And I think, we were saying earlier, you say New Zealand, you don't know what's going on in Australia, probably vice versa as well. It's the same here for us, I don't know what's going on in France or Italy unless, you're aware of somebody somewhere doing that kind of thing who then connects you up with someone, or you're at an event like this where you're chatting to the person next to you and they're like, oh, have you heard of so-and-so? That's where you make those connections, and that is why having these physical events is really important, because it does bring everyone together and it is a great way of sharing that info. And again, make the connections, build the network, grow the field. So I'm just thinking of other galleries who do good things as well. There's a CDLA, the Centre des Livres d'Artistes in France, which has been promoting artists' books forever. Very energetic programme, again, great place to visit. There's EMH Arts Gallery in London, which was a physical space and is now a roaming space. But Emma Hill, who set that up, has been promoting artists' books for years as well. There's Central Booking in New York. There's Gallery at in Poznan, which have been going probably, I think, since the late 80s, early 90s. Really looking on at kind of what goes on around the book. So that's artist books, experimental works, sound books. And then we have places like Galerie Druck and Book in Vienna. So Suzanne Padberg, she's an amazing curator who's very much promoting artist books. We'll have themed exhibitions. What I absolutely love about her gallery as well, apart from the fact I'd love to go and see it in Vienna, is that she makes a video. So every time there's a show, if you look on the website, it's like a series of bookshelves with the books on. You click on the book and it will show you a video of the book.
Oh, wow.
How cool is that?
Very.
And again, really generous for people who can't be there. So that's fantastic.
I like the way the libraries can be worked with to develop some of those kinds of things as well. The galleries are fantastic because they bring an entirely new audience into that space, and it's often a way to get new people into the craft.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because usually somebody at the gallery has got to have that interest, personal interest to make that happen. And
it's the same with libraries, isn't it? I mean, I think our library here was collecting artist books in the 70s because we had Onofini, the gallery in town, selling artist books. That was a very time of great energy in artist books, the idea of the democratic multiples, so the gallery's selling them, the librarian here is really into them. This collection starts, and then as all of them do, the librarian retires, and you have this kind of gap of inactivity because the next person is into paintings or something else art related. So that, again, it very much depends on that kind of dedication of the person who's in charge of, curating, cataloguing.
I recently went to the State Library in Melbourne, and they had a whole floor arranged on the book and all its forms over the ages. And generally those kinds of libraries do have a display or a semi-permanent display somewhere in the building, which is great. But
even here, I think the V&A Museum and the British Library, they've quite often got a display somewhere in the building of, what the treasures from the collection. Here are some books, and then you get artists, coming in practically fainting because they're like, look at my book, it's on display in the British Library or the National Art Library, and, I'm famous at last. So, Terrie, tell me some of the people who inspire you.
Well, like many people, I started with Alyssa Golden's 100 plus bindings, so sort of like a classic textbook for the more sort of crafty approach to bookbinding. But it's one of those books that I go back to over and over again, and I just love the way she's presented her ideas and the structures in a way that you can teach yourself from reading it. There's some absolute classic people that are out in the world, like Hedy Kyle, who has now produced a book. But even so, you can find her structures and think how to make them online. Yeah. And it's great that for people like Anne Goy, the secret Belgian binder, that her instructions, the proper one, the good ones, are now available as a booklet. I just like the way that we are now using those more polished publications that are available with fantastic images and instructions and so on. And it also gets the person who invented the bindings name out into the world. I mean, there's been some lovely people like Kamencho Oregi, and it's sort of like, oh my gosh, she's so generous with sharing what she does. And you can still find it online, and you can find what other people have done with those binding structures. And there are people who regularly share, like Catherine Miller from Biopia Press. Yeah. You can sign up to her and be inspired every week. Or closer to home, we've got Darren Schneider, who, well, if you need to know anything about anything in a quite a technical sort of way, you can find out how to do it, and it's very clear visually and easy to follow, and it gives you a lot of confidence moving forward. So they're definitely some of the people that inspire me. So what about you? Who's inspired you?
I'm thinking of these more in context of your conference, because obviously I get inspired by hundreds of people. Yes. So in terms of people who create amazing books or teach those amazing skills, there are people like Tracy Rutledge and Sue Doggett. So, quite often they're teaching individual classes out and about, but also at the City Lit in London. So that might be anything from, using gold to leather to, all these amazing skills and things that people are not going to learn unless those people are out there teaching them how to do it. There are people who inspire me, Ulrike Stolz, Ute Schneider, who work together as Usus in Germany, who've been making the most beautiful and amazing books for years. And that's, again, that could be letterpress or hand painting, really beautiful conceptual works that, but they're just so beautifully and solidly made. Quite often responding to music as well. There's some great videos online of them talking about their work in English, because they're amazing and they could do that too.
Wow.
People like Les Bicknell here in the UK, who's actually artist in residence at a nuclear power station at the moment. But
As you do.
He makes work around what he calls a conversation around bookness, what books are, what bookness is. So he's been making these 3D forms, 2 of which I've just borrowed from him to send to a show in Japan, which is looking at kind of conversations around books. So these are 3D printed book structures or forms, so they're very organic forms, but they're kind of looking at what a book does, the movements of a book, the shape of a book, the being of a book, which I think are really kind of inspiring. People like Gracie and Louise, who I mentioned earlier, so they're in Australia. I find them absolutely amazing practitioners, because they'll do stuff like you can have a very accessible zine from them, or you can have the most beautifully constructed book that you're like, okay, I can't buy that. The collection buys that. I go and visit it. But I can have the, $10 book, and yet in that spare time, which I don't imagine they have much of between everything else, they are qualified bat carers. So rescue bats and look after them, get them back together, and send them back out into the wild. So yeah,
Wow.
I find them very inspirational anyway. There's people like Steve Diber for Red Trillium Press, who spent many years travelling between the States and Cuba, so to actually collaborate with artists there to bring their works out, which is just such a generous and lovely thing to do. People like Hilke Kurtzker here in the UK, setting up book events and festivals and celebrations. There's Clifton Meadow, who I mentioned, who won the Hitzog August Bibliothek Prize. Amazing artist, really looking at kind of aspects of bad history and presenting it to you in a way that makes you want to read it and then be like, oh, no, I didn't want to know that. There's Ireri Tepete in Mexico, who is the most fantastic artist. Really absolutely adore her work. She does lots of work around the climate crisis, including her series around volcanoes. So there's an active volcano near her. And that idea of you have a watch, the red, amber, green alert of the volcano. But her books, I'm doing the movements, so only Terrie can see this, so are very high. So you have a concertina that would come right up in the shape of a mountain. So again, really inspirational with the idea of structure. Form follows content. So yeah, they're just some of the people. I could go on all day, but I think that's some ones that are relevant. So Terrie, final question. We have fantasy availability of anyone in the world who will run a workshop for you that you can join. So who would you pick?
Well, I'd pick Sun Everard. I think there's something, I keep seeing images on screen and think, that would be fantastic. Prior to the conference, we tried to get Monique Lallier to come over, but I just love what she does, and for so long she's been pushing that boundary, but for me it's sort of like a European kind of way, and I think, yes, please, I'd like to do a workshop with her. And in fact, you still probably could if you travelled to America. My favourite sort of binding style person would be Jean de Gonnet. There's just something about those bindings that are yummy, and they're very sort of simple, but they lead to lots of opportunities. Yeah, and then in terms of modern ideas and thinking, I rather like Nadine Werner. There's just something about the way she approaches and keeps things very, very simple, but the construction becomes part of the whole concept, which is fantastic. So that'd be on my list. What about you?
Great. I'd say Simon Good, simply because that would be an excuse to go to LCBA. He's a great teacher. He's very patient, very kind. It's because of people like him that amazing places like LCBA exist. I would say Lucy May Schofield, who's another British artist who makes the most beautiful books. She spent time in Japan learning techniques there, and she runs workshops here. So you'd be like, yes, I'd love to come and spend time with you. And also, again, a very gentle person who's very kind and very sharing and very inspirational, especially her work in that sense of landscape, body. So thinking about how we live in the world and how we live with nature and landscape. So I think that would be a beautiful workshop to do with her. Who else? There's Sarah Nichols in the States, whose work I really admire just because of her informational pamphlets where she makes really inspirational things about, just thinking about how we live in society. She's made beautiful letterpress works that are very affordable, that talk about things like what would happen if we cancelled debt, or how do people live together and develop co-ops, or how do you grow your own food in the city, that kind of thing. So I think she'd be inspirational not only just because of her technical skills, which are fantastic, because she's always working in letterpress and relief print, making these gorgeous she says pamphlets, I would say amazing artist books. So you would learn from her in so many ways. And I think Tim Mosley, possibly because I'm just being very selfish and that would mean I would be back in Australia, but mostly because he is the master of pulp printing and, taught me the first time I came to Australia. I was so lucky to go off with Tim, do a residency, learn massively from him, and we've kept in touch since. And yeah, I'd find him very inspirational to be back there with him, but again, I'd be brushing up on his amazing skill. Well, hopefully our conversation has given some ideas and inspiration for you in the audience at the conference. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, but I'm there in spirit. The whole idea of this conversation was that you're not out there on your own. There's a big community out there. You might seem like a far away sometimes, but there's lots of opportunities to connect up, whether you can travel or not. There's lots of information available online. There's lots of free information. If you want to sign up for the Book Arts newsletter, you can. That's a free service as well. You just email me. So it's about building community, keeping it going, and especially I think in New Zealand where you are, there's so much work going on that people need to know about.
Thank you, Sarah, for your time today. It's wonderful to be actually physically in front of you and having this conversation. I really appreciate you giving us the time.
My pleasure.
And I also really appreciate you for being one of the centres of information in the world. It's like your newsletter and your website. They're fantastic places to go to start this journey of connection and so on. And also whether it be to find out more about how you can learn more about the craft, or you can learn more about what people are doing, or you can make connections and so on. So I think that's very, very important for us thinking forwards. It's like, well, what can we do for the craft, and how can people progress through or learn or expand their ideas or whatever they might want to do. And hopefully today we've left people with a few ideas on the wide variety of opportunities out there. It's not as hard as it's sometimes.
Not as lonely as it felt.
Not as lonely. Indeed. So thank you very much, Sarah.
Well,
it's been brilliant.
Thank you, Terrie. It's been lovely talking to you too. And enjoy the conference, everyone.